Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we will be going over the most stagnant skylines in the US. In this video, we will go over 10 skylines in the US that are the most stagnant. Now most stagnant means the skyline has not changed in a long time, and has not seen any major new construction projects. And least stagnant is the complete opposite of this, meaning the skyline has experienced lots of growth and change. Now since many of these cities have smaller constructions that don't affect the skyline that much, I will only take into account buildings that have a major visible position in the skyline, and I also will not be taking into account buildings located outside the downtown or far away from the downtown, as they do not add anything to the main skyline, which is the focal point of any city. Also, one more thing, that all cities on this list will be major cities, as you cannot expect smaller cities to have lots of high-rise development in their downtown cores. And finally, I will also go over census data for each metro area of the cities we cover, and hopefully see a trend that correlates to the cease of development of the skyline. And if there is no correlation, I will explain why said city does not build high-rises. Anyway, let's get right into this list. So first up, in number 10, we have Fresno in California, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 2005. Here's a photo of the skyline in 2006, and here's a photo of it now in 2023. No change. The city of Fresno does not have a very large skyline, despite the size of the city. The tallest, most dominant building in the city is the Pacific Southwest building, at 67 meters tall, and other notable buildings in the skyline are the Golden State County Plaza and the Fresno County Courthouse. The most recent building that modified the skyline was the aforementioned Fresno County Courthouse in 2005, which stands at a height of 69 meters tall. Now let's take a look at some census data. Here we have the metro population and population growth rate in 2005, and here we have the metro and population growth today in 2023. The only trend I notice is that the population growth has slowed down to nearly 1%, but I don't believe that correlates to the stagnancy of the skyline, as Fresno has always had a very stagnant skyline, with on average only one major building being constructed every 30 years. Since there is no correlation between population and high-rises, I'd like to explain why Fresno doesn't build upwards. Land in Fresno is simply just cheap. It's cheaper to build outwards than it is to build upwards, and Fresno does this, which is why it doesn't have any high-rises. Now in number 9, we have St. Louis, Missouri, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 2000. Here's a photo of the skyline in 2000, and here it is today. The tallest building in downtown St. Louis is currently 1 Metropolitan Square at 181 meters tall. However, the skyline is also dominated by the famous Gateway Arch, which stands at 192 meters tall. Other notable buildings in the skyline include 909 Chestnut Street and 1 US Bank Plaza. The most recent high-rise in the city is 1 Cardinal Way at 97 meters tall. However, the most recent building in the city that had a big change on the skyline was the Thomas F. Eagleton Courthouse, built in the year 2000, which stands at a height of 170 meters tall. Now it's time to examine some population data. Here's the metro pop and the metro growth rate in 2000, and here it is in 2023. As you can see, after the year 2000, which is when the last major building was built in the city, there was a dip in the population increase rate, which means demand for new skyscrapers is far less frequent. So the skyline does kind of correlate with the population data. Also, we can expect the stagnancy of the St. Louis skyline to be broken soon, as the population increase rate is projected to significantly rise soon. Now the reason why the population rate decreased like that is because St. Louis is a dying city, It's one of the most dangerous cities in the US. However, St. Louis is making a comeback, which is evident in the city itself, as well as the new increase in the population rate. Now in number 8, we have Jacksonville, Florida, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 1999. Here's a picture of the skyline in the 1990s, and here's a picture of it today, in 2023. Currently, the tallest building in Jacksonville is the Bank of America Tower at 188 meters tall, and other notable towers which dominate the city are the Wells Fargo Center and the TIAA Bank Center. The most recent building completed in the city is the FIS headquarters, constructed in 2023 at a height of 65 meters tall. However, the most recent building in the city that had a large change in the skyline was the Adams Mark Hotel, constructed in 1999 at a height of 64 meters. Although small, Adams Mark Hotel is prominent due to its location right on the shore of the St. Johns River, and its facade also makes it stand out. Now here's the population and the population growth data, 1999 and 2023. As you can see, there isn't much correlation between the skyline of Jacksonville and the population trends of the metro area, as the population growth rate stayed the same long after 1999. However, expect the skyline to stay stagnant, as the population growth is getting slower and slower, as projected. Now, one of the reasons why Jacksonville doesn't build up their downtown is because they need to focus their resources on the rest of Jacksonville and not just downtown. This is because the city of Jacksonville is geographically big, the largest city by area in the contiguous United States, and encompasses the entire Jacksonville metro area. Now, since Jacksonville has such a large footprint, they cannot concentrate development in downtown, as they must concentrate some resources in the rest of the city. This large footprint also means the city has a lower population density than most other cities, which leads to a much lower demand for skyscrapers, and the demand is just getting lower and lower as the population growth rate keeps going down. Now in number 7, we have Rochester in New York State, which has not changed its skyline since 1995. Here's a picture of Rochester in 2001, and here's a picture of it in 2023. It's the exact same. The tallest building in the city is currently the Xerox Tower at a height of 135 meters tall, and other notable buildings that make up the skyline are the Kodak Tower and the Metropolitan Tower. Now, Rochester literally has not constructed a single building in downtown since 1995, not even a small low-rise. Correct me if I'm wrong, since I'm just looking at Rochester through Google Earth, and that can be outdated, but from what I saw, there were no new buildings constructed after the year 1995. Now, the most recent building constructed in the city is the Boston Loan Place, and it also happens to be the most recently completed building in the city that had a big impact on the skyline of Rochester, being built in 1995. Now let's look at the population data for Metro Rochester. Here is some data from 1995, and here is some data from present day 2023. Taking a look at the data, you can see that 5 years after 1995, in the year 2000, the metro drastically started losing population growth, and has remained like that to present day. In 2020, during COVID, the metro area hit an all-time record low population growth of 0%, which gives us a reason to why no new buildings have been constructed. This is simply because the city is dying, and for obvious reasons, nobody's going to build high-rises in a dying city. However, post-COVID, the Rochester metro area is increasing its population growth rate, and it's expected to rise back to around 1%, so you may expect a few smaller high-rises popping up in Rochester soon. Next up, in number 6, we have Detroit, Michigan, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 1993. Here's a picture of Detroit in the early 1990s, and here's a picture of it today. It's the exact same. The tallest building in the city is currently the main tower of the Renaissance Center at a height of 230 meters tall, and other notable buildings in the skyline are the Greater Penobscot Building, one Woodward Place, and the Alley Center. The most recently completed building in the downtown area was the Huntington Bank building in 2022. However, the most recent building that changed the skyline was the Alley Center, at a height of 185 meters tall. Now let's take a look at the population data from 1993 to 2023. Here's the population and population increase rate from 1993, and here it is from 2023. As you can see, it does kinda correlate. Detroit has not built many new buildings until Alley Center was built in 1993, which on the chart shows an increase in population, which is an increase in demand. However, after 1993, the metro population then goes back on a decline until today, where it's projected to increase again. Now, I'm really not surprised that Detroit is on this list. The city of Detroit lost population for 7 decades in a row, and it filed for bankruptcy in 2013. Detroit went from a city proper population of 1.8 million people to 600,000 people today, after the decline of its automobile industry. However, a lot of these people simply just moved out into the suburbs, which is why the metro area is still around 3 million people. Even though these people are still staying in the metro, this still reduces demand for new high-rises in downtown, as these people can simply just work and live in the suburbs. Now, I do not expect any more change in the Detroit skyline anytime soon, as the city of Detroit just keeps losing more and more population. Next up, in number 5, we have Memphis, Tennessee, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 1992. Here's a picture of the skyline in 1992, and here it is today. Currently, the tallest building in Memphis is 100 North Main, at a height of 131 meters tall. And other notable buildings towering over the city are the First Tennessee Bank building and One Commerce Square. The most recent building constructed in the city is the Artesian Apartments, built in 2016, at 61 meters tall. However, the newest building in the city that had a large change on the skyline was the Memphis Pyramid, built back in 1992, standing at a height of 98 meters tall. Although it's just north of downtown Memphis, its enormous size makes it very prominent in the skyline, combined with its well-known status. Now let's analyze some population data from 1992 and 2023. There does appear to somewhat be a correlation. The drop of population growth does not align with the last major high-rise being built in the city, as that began to drop just after the year 2000. However, the drop in population growth rate does give us an explanation for why the skyline has laid dormant for so long. As it has plateaued and dropped slightly just before 2020, I won't expect many new high-rises to be built in the city. Now, I was not able to find much information on why the skyline has laid so dormant, so if you guys are watching this video and know why, please leave a comment down below explaining why. Now in number 4, we have Birmingham, Alabama, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 1990. Here's an undated picture of the Birmingham skyline, but I presume it's from the early 90s because of the vintage look, and it includes the Alabama Power Building, which was built in 1990. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then here's the Birmingham skyline today in 2023. It's the exact same. Currently, the tallest building in Birmingham is the Shipped Tower, at a height of 138 meters tall. And other notable buildings that dominate the skyline are the Region Center and the AT&T City Center. Now, the most recent high-rise completed in the downtown area is the Alabama Power Building, and it also happens to be the most recent building to change the skyline, being completed in 1990 at a height of 98 meters tall. Now let's look at the population data from 1990 and 2023. I do not see any correlation between the skyline and the population data. In fact, they seem to contradict each other, as the last time the Birmingham skyline really changed was in 1990, and after 1990, the metro population really began to skyrocket. Now, the reason why Birmingham doesn't have any new high-rise buildings updating the skyline is because they just don't need any. Birmingham in 2022 had an office vacancy rate of 13.76%, as a lot of people living in Metro Birmingham choose to work from home. This is because of two major reasons. One, Birmingham has very low wages, so working from home allows you to earn more because it generally makes people more productive. And two, Birmingham is one of the most dangerous major cities in the US, so working from home greatly reduces your chances of becoming a victim of crime. Now, because of this, I won't expect any new changes in the Birmingham skyline anytime soon. Now in number 3, we have New Orleans, Louisiana, which its skyline has remained the exact same since 1989. Here's a picture of the New Orleans skyline in the early 1990s, and here's a picture of it today. Currently, the tallest building in New Orleans is One Shell Square, rising at a height of 212 meters tall, and other notable high-rises towering over the city include Place St. Charles and the New Orleans World Trade Center. Now, the most recent building completed in downtown New Orleans was the Odeon at South Market Street at a height of 104 meters tall, completed in 2020. However, the most recent building in the city that changed the skyline was the Benson Tower, built in 1989, at a height of 124 meters tall. And although shorter compared to most other buildings in New Orleans, it still holds a prominent place in the skyline, as it can easily be seen from the Superdome. Now let's look at some population data charts. Here's data from 1989, and here's data from 2023. The data does correlate with the skyline, because the New Orleans building boom ended in the mid to late 80s, and by then, the city had already been in decline for a while, which means there's no reason to construct new buildings. The metro population continued to decline until after Hurricane Katrina, which is that massive fall you see in the graph. Now, as the metro has been growing since after the hurricane, and is projected to rise back to 1980 levels, we might expect a new high-rise boom, but I highly doubt it, as New Orleans is still a dying city in my opinion, despite the population growth. New Orleans has been named as the murder capital of the US on multiple occasions, and the city is very vulnerable to natural disasters, and a lot of the city is predicted to be submerged by 2050. These are both very good reasons to leave the city, so I think the metro is going to start losing population again, despite the prediction. Next up, in number 2, we have Tucson, Arizona, which's skyline has remained the exact same since 1986. Here's a picture of the Tucson skyline in the late 80s, and here it is today. It's basically the exact same picture. Currently, the tallest building in Tucson is the Unisource Energy Tower at a height of 101 meters tall, and other notable high-rises in the skyline are the Pima County Legal Services Building and the Bank of America Plaza. Now, the most recent high-rise completed in the downtown area is the Unisource Energy Corporation headquarters, constructed in 2011 to a height of around 45 meters tall. However, the most recent building that had a big change on the skyline was the aforementioned Unisource Energy Tower, which was built back in 1986 and is 101 meters tall. Now let's look at some population data from 1986 and 2023. As you can see, there is no correlation between the skyline or data, but I'm not surprised. Lots of cities in the southwestern United States don't really focus on their downtowns. Instead, they rapidly sprawl outwards in the form of suburbs. As you can see from the graphs, Tucson is a thriving city. Its metro population is just growing and growing with no signs of stopping. Here's a satellite shot of Metro Tucson in the mid-80s, and here it is in 2023. It's a bit hard to see, but all that just north of downtown is all brand new suburbs. Now, because Tucson sprawls out so much, there's just no need to concentrate new buildings into downtown, as they can just build new office space out in these new suburbs, as it's more convenient for people in the suburbs who live far away from the downtown area. Now, before we get to number 1, I want to quickly give an honourable mention to Austin, Texas and Miami, Florida. Both of these cities had very small and stagnant skylines before their high-rise booms in the late 80s and 90s. However, there was a high-rise boom in both of these cities that has continued on to this day. Now, both of these cities have extremely modern skylines and are constantly building new high-rises, complete opposite of what they used to look like. I also want to quickly give mention to Washington DC. Basically, the last time the skyline changed was back in 1884 with the completion of the Washington Monument. However, Washington DC has zoning laws and height restrictions due to it being the capital city of the United States. This is to protect the views and unique character of the city and its federal buildings. Also, Metro Washington DC does have a multitude of large business districts with lots of tall buildings and high-rises, the largest being Arlington in Virginia, just south of DC, which has a large modern skyline. Also, quick dishonourable mention, Oklahoma City. Skyline lay dormant for 30 years, and then they built that monstrosity called the Devon Energy Tower. The building itself isn't bad, but it doesn't fit in, and doesn't belong in Oklahoma City. It would be better if it was in New York City, where it actually fit in. Anyway, let's get right into number 1. And now in number 1, we have Tulsa, Oklahoma. Its skyline has stayed the exact same since 1984, basically 40 years, as this video is uploaded in late December 2023. Anyway, here's a picture of the Tulsa skyline in 1984, and here it is today. Not a single change at all. Currently, the tallest building in the city is the BOK Tower, at a height of 203 meters tall, and other notable buildings towering over downtown Tulsa are the First Place Tower and the Bank of America Tower. The most recent high-rise completed in downtown Tulsa is One Place Tower, completed in 2013. However, the most recent building to change the skyline was the Mid-Continent Tower, completed back in 1984. Which was just a 20-floor addition to an existing 16-floor building, built in 1918. In total, the Mid-Continent Tower rises to a height of 156 meters tall. Now let's look at some population data from 1984 and 2023. Now there is no correlation between the skyline of Tulsa and the new population data shown in the charts, so I'm just going to explain why Tulsa doesn't build any new high-rises. There's simply no new demand for high-rises in downtown Tulsa. In fact, Tulsa has an office vacancy rate of around 17% as of 2023, which is quite high. In the charts we just looked at, you can also see the population growth rate is slowing down, which means demand is also slowing down, so I will not expect to see any new high-rise buildings changing the skyline of downtown Tulsa anytime soon. Anyway, that is it for the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Although it's not really an informative type of video, like some of my other ones, it's really just a video I thought would be interesting to make. But if you did enjoy it and want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and thanks for watching to the end.